First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody to our podcast. This is the first of what we hope are many podcasts that we're running under the theme of distribution news you can use. Ace Micro is happy to sponsor these events. And again, my name is Mark Munson. I'll be the moderator today. Joining us today, we have two industry experts when it comes to demand planning and forecasting, which is the subject for today. The actual title is Demand Planning and Forecasting for the Modern Distributor in an Unfair World. And we'll explain that a little bit further as to what an unfair world is. By introduction, I'll turn it over to Warren and let Warren kind of describe his background and his roles and responsibilities.
Excellent, Mark. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for having Netstock on your show. So I think the quick sort of starting point there is my role in the business as VP of Solution Consultants, and I'm responsible for making sure the solutions that Netstock puts out meets the customer's needs. And the distribution space, I'm the guy, and the team that works with me is really making sure that the things that we promise can be done. That's pretty much my role in the business.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Warren. Don, you want to take a moment?
Yep. Yeah, Don, Mark, thank you again for having us. It's a pleasure to see you and be a part of your content series, and looking forward to getting into today's discussion. But my name is Don Martin. I'm the VP of Channels here for Netstock. So my role predominantly encompasses managing our VAR and publisher and channel partners that we work with, like yourself. And we have a team here in the US. We're growing our team globally as well throughout our different regions. But it's basically our team's sole focus is to empower our channel partners to have their customers solve whatever distribution and forecasting problems they might have that Netstock can come in and fix. And also helping you keep your current customers happy, but also really empowering you and enabling all of our partners to help you win new ERP deals with our platform as well. So that's kind of our sole focus.
All right, fantastic. Well, Don, I appreciate it. Don and Warren, again, I appreciate both of you guys joining the call today. So let's just dive right into the content. And we're going to start pretty high level here because this is one of those subjects where if you ask 10 people their definition of demand planning and forecasting, you might get 10 different answers. So we want to kind of level set, what the definition of demand planning and forecasting is. So Warren, I'm going to really target most of the questions towards you and then have Don jump in as needed. But what are your thoughts on demand planning and forecasting? How would you define it?
So, Mark, again, there's so many versions of putting a plan together, forecasting, demand planning, whatever that. At the end of the day, demand planning is some approach of somebody putting a plan together of what the future holds, be it a week, be it a month, be it a quarter, be it a year. Somebody or a group of people come together and say it's gonna be X, Y, Z. So that is demand planning. We've got a philosophy at Netstock that says fix your demand planning, fix your supply chain. So it all starts with what that plan is. Now, again, we see all variations every single day. There's a lot of customers using Excel to put a plan together with salespeople, with marketing people, with operations. Again, the fundamental thing is it's just a plan. It's some sort of idea of what's going to happen in the future.
All right, fantastic. Don, anything you want to add to that, or?
Yeah, and I think Netstock has really shifted over the years and really leveraging the term predict. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about being sophisticated predictors of your inventory plans as you move forward. But not only is it having that plan, but being able to predict what that future holds as well. I think that's a really important part of demand planning as well.
All right, fantastic. So now that we have a definition of demand planning and forecasting kind of at the higher level, so let's dive in a little bit more deeply and cover some more specific topics. So Warren, again, what are some of the key risks that proper demand planning and forecasting help mitigate? I mean, are there things that you can point to that say, okay, yeah, we typically see these things when we go into projects?
Absolutely. So I think the number one thing is that, with this plan, the more you can automate that, or the quicker you can do that or come up with a plan, the sooner the organization can then go and scrutinize that. So again, there's multiple stakeholders within the organization. I always tell people that you don't always look at it this way, but you all use the same inventory to achieve your own individual goals. So be it finance, be it marketing, be it sales operations, they all use the same stuff. So one of the key risks that I often see is that people don't have the ability to very speedily get to a point of knowing what the plan should be. So that's obviously the number one risk. The second risk that I see is that people don't review this against what, the result was last month or last week or yesterday. So often there's a plan that gets put together, but whether that plan is a good plan or not is really, up to the organization to go back and review that. So those are probably the two main risks. And again, I think the number one risk is not having a plan. I think, a lot of organizations just, and it blows my mind often when people go and say, well, I think I sold 10,000, last year. I think it's going to be 11,000 this year. And kind of use the left thumb extraction method of, figuring out what that could be. So that's probably the number one thing, is not having a plan at all.
Well, and it's also more to that point, it's also having a disconnected plan where finance has a certain plan, sales has a certain plan, distribution operations has a certain plan. So not only making sure that plan is created but it's also that it's aligning throughout the organization as well. It's huge.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point. That's a great point. So, so moving on, there's discussions about, and there's an old saying, if you don't measure it, you can't improve it. So I want to talk about that a little bit further. What is the best measure an organization can take to determine if they're actually being successful with their demand planning and forecasting activities? Are there thoughts, Warren, you can share?
Absolutely. Look, I certainly don't want to tell people there's only one way that you got to do this. This is the golden method. If you ask a lot of, myself, I'm into sort of, I fly planes all around the place. And if you ask me what I use to measure what the weather looks like, there's a number of ways in which you can do that. But the point is, I got to measure, what the weather looks like before I take off on a plane. So I think the number one thing is to obviously start with a measurement that's universal in the organization, that's understood by everybody in the organization, and everybody can understand whether it gets better or not. So that, whatever that might be. The typical approach that people do is use forecast error, which is a bit of an oxymoron because it's going to be a forecast and you're trying to figure out how wrong it's going to be. But essentially, if you're getting a 30% error or 50% error, you know that you're wrong 50% of the time, and then move forward. They're trying to kind of lower that error. The other method that I've also seen people use is, forecast accuracy. Those things are measured very, very separately, or very differently rather. And I think the fundamental thing is just, are you getting better? If you're not getting better, if you're going the wrong way, well, you need to relook at this whole thing. There's a very interesting stat that was actually published by, I can't remember the company. Let me just try and see what that number is. That might have to be edited out. Where is this? So the stat was actually done by a research company called AMR, which basically says for every 3% aggregated forecast improvement, you get a 2% net profit gain. So that's obviously taking the error and minimizing the error, that then directly translates to net profit. So there's a big incentive to get those things measured and improve that over time.
Yeah, that's a pretty amazing stat. When you shared that with us, we did some preparation prior to this call, and you shared that stat, and I was just sort of shocked by it, but also optimistic in that you can drive that level of change within your organization. So, no, great content there. So, all right, so resources. Let's talk about resources a little bit. We're talking about demand planning and how it enables distributors, but how does it impact resources, and how can an organization potentially better allocate resources and allocate them more efficiently?
So I think, again, demand planning can be as painful as the organization makes it to be. So if the organization, has a lot of manual tools, have a lot of manual approaches, you're going to require a lot of resources, a lot of time, and time equals money. So we often see, demand planners go and create their own Excel sheet because there's nothing in the organization to do that. We often joke around at Netstock saying, salespeople get Salesforce, which is this incredible CRM that tracks things and analyzes things. The CFO and the finance team gets a nice ERP that does amazing things. And often, what does the demand planner get? Excel. So, and that's the reality, because it takes
poor demand. Those poor demand plans.
Yeah, exactly. So if you got a manual plan, it's not impossible. You're going to get to an answer. The challenge is, whether, how long it takes you to get to that answer and whether you still have enough time or ample time to respond to that. That's the challenge. So if you do things manually, it's going to be a lot of resource intense. I've heard some stats in NetStock where somebody has taken 4 weeks to build an order before using NetStock Inventory Advisor. And then when they have Inventory Advisor, the same person said it now takes me 30 minutes to do that. So it really is resource intense. The other thing that I can also add there, Mark, is that as a business, we continuously going out in the market, especially North America, to try and find the brightest young skills out there, or the brightest skills out there to bring into our business from a supply chain perspective. And those skills are not available. So whether it is 10 years ago, suddenly people deciding to not go into the supply chain field, but those skills are not available. So not only are you overloading the skills that you have, but it is becoming increasingly hard to fill that and supplement the team with young, bright minds that are able to do this and understand this.
Yeah. And I laugh at your Excel reference because I've gone into so many organizations where I look around and between, what I call the Excel spreadsheets from hell that are used for various activities, whiteboards, sticky notes. I feel like I can make a living just replacing Excel, whiteboards, and sticky notes. And it's certainly prevalent in the demand planning and forecasting space. So it's there's a lot better ways to do this. And that's what people need to realize that and go out there and search for the right solutions. We talk about, in manufacturing and distribution, there's a lot of thoughts on, lean and lean concepts and just-in-time inventory and those types of things. And you made an interesting comment earlier on about just-in-case inventory. And I think all distributors, they're so concerned about being able to fulfill the order that they have this just-in-case inventory. Do you see a lot of that when in organizations that you're working with?
Absolutely, Mark. So, NetStock is a global organization or global business. So we've got, offices in Australia, South Africa, Germany, UK, North America. So we see this across the globe. Where the sun shines, NetStock operates, which is really, it's a privilege to be part of this because we get exposed to many, many problems that might not be in certain territories yet. So we can always gauge what happens in the world. Again, I think we see a lot of it in North America where, money was really cheap for a long time. It didn't hurt to really stock a warehouse with just in case, and just keep those things for, the sort of rainy day when somebody needs that. However,
very expensive. Yeah. Very expensive.
It's now become very expensive, and certain policymakers from a political perspective could make certain tariffs from China even higher. So not only is it costing you money to keep things, but there's also a future potential penalty for not producing it in the United States and importing that from China. So all of these things are part of the wonderful world of supply chain. It's gonna move all over the place, and that's why people like us exist, to help our customers navigate this. But certainly in North America, I see the just in case purely based on the fact that the customer service has to be in excess of 90%, or you lose the customer. And I can say this because I'm not from here. This is probably the most unfair place in the world to sell stuff. The customer wants it. They want it now. They want it at the lowest price, delivered to my house the same day or tomorrow. And if you can't do that, I'm going to go somewhere else. So the distributors are it's almost like a little beyond a catch-22, because they have to stock as much as they can, as wide as they can, to really offer the highest level of service at the lowest margin. So we definitely see that.
Well, and that's that retail concept of Amazon same day, next day does spill into that B2B environment as well. So whether you're a distributor working to the end consumer, or whether you're working with other organizations to provide product, that instant gratification that I need it now, best price tomorrow, that spreads throughout the B2B landscape, not only in the B2C market, right? We as consumers are used to that, right? We're used to saying, hey, click and have it arrive that day or tomorrow, right? My wife and I were buying some blinds for our house, and she's like, oh my gosh, these things are coming in on Friday. I'm like, that's in 2 days. I think it's going to be, but that urgency of now, right?
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah.
Entire landscape in the supply chain world, not just the retail world, but the B2B world as well.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. Is that as consumers, we've become spoiled with this Amazon effect, and it's funny because I just bought a cabin up in North Georgia, and I'm doing some work on it, and I'm getting on. Of course, like everybody else, I get on Amazon to say, okay, I need this, I need that, and I ordered everything. Everything was fine, and amazingly enough, it was all going to come like tomorrow. But then it got to the little local post office in northwest Georgia where I am, and this is kind of a comment on the postal service currently, but they shipped it back. They couldn't deliver it to me, so they shipped it back. So I'm sitting there and I'm just aghast by this. How can Amazon and the U.S. Postal Service not get me something tomorrow like they promised? And then I sit there and look at my expectation and go, how real is my expectation? But in today's world, that expectation is, and that Amazon effect is the standard.
That is very real.
Yeah. So, so bottom line is I had to drive to Home Depot or Lowe's or something, but I eventually got it, so it was all good.
That's good.
All right. So moving on, we talked about the importance of it and how it improves customer service and customer loyalty. We want to. A lot of times we carry extra inventory to make sure that we can fulfill those orders as soon as they come in, especially for our high volume, most loyal customers. So I'm going to move on a little bit from that and talk about some specific examples of how effective demand planning and forecasting can help costs. Margins are skinny. We talked about that before. Warren, I think you mentioned that. Margins are extremely skinny. In some situations, the only margin that a distributor may get is the rebates from the manufacturer. So what are the things that we're, what examples can you provide that show how we can do things more efficiently, reduce cost, and therefore hopefully increase profitability?
Absolutely. So Mark, that's an interesting one because I was chatting to a company yesterday, which they're partner to Netstock, and what they do is revenue growth management. So they look at the aspect of demand planning and forecasting, all those things. But what they do is they also add another component on there, which is pricing. So what product in what channel at what price, and these guys are able to predict future promotions. Kind of the gain or what you'll get of that at about 91% accuracy. So the world is getting to a point where it's no longer, call it the surprise model of, oh, we had a promo, oh, we sold our stuff, and oh, by the way, we had single-digit margins. People are actually able to now, companies or services, whatever you want to call it, are able to now start telling you what those things will look like in the future. So to answer your question about the results, if you start the journey, it's going to be a long journey. Demand planning is a process, but the results that you get there is that, first of all, you can start driving collaboration within the business, which is a huge win. Everybody works towards a common goal. And the second thing is that if you start delivering a service or a process whereby external people can input to your program, collaborative planning on the supply chain level, it's huge. I often hear people, talk about, why must I have, a warehouse full of inventory? Why can't my supplier give me stuff? Where's the days of vendor managed inventory or consignment managed inventory where, both of us are together in this? So the results really that we see at Netstock is huge. We typically see, for anybody coming from Excel, about a 50% improvement on forecast accuracy. That's the typical numbers that we get. The other tool that we have, which is IBP or Predictor IBP or Integrated Business Planning, that really helps you even drive further. That really gets you to understand where the deviation is from the plan. Was it by this customer? Was it by that channel? Was it by this product type? A bulldozer and a pen they're both products, but they're very different in how they move through the supply chain. So if you can determine what those things are and what the delays are, you'll obviously get a huge result out of that.
Right. And when we focused on, in this conversation so far, we've focused on mostly our four walls. Okay. What do we control as a distributor in our supply chain? We talked a little bit about the end customer, but I want to kind of look backwards in the supply chain and what I like to call the value chain and say, okay, great. Now that we have all these great new tools and capabilities, is it wise to start sharing this with maybe some of our suppliers? I mean, are you seeing a trend there? Because we all tend to be so, we want to hold on to our information, hold on to our data. We don't want to share. We don't play well with others, I guess is a good way of saying it. So do you think it's intelligent to share downstream with your suppliers?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's the way of the future. You're going to have to get to that point. I think if we go back, 10 years, 20 years, maybe even 30 years, your supplier was your competitive edge. Where you source stuff, how you buy it, how you get there was your competitive edge. I grew up in an environment where, my family had a business, and where they were sourcing things from and how they were putting it together was the secret. That was the secret sauce.
Oh,
And
that's
it
the
was
IP.
good.
Yeah, that's the IP. That's the
100%.
intellectual property right there. You're right.
100%, and everybody would always guess, is it used at somewhere, but the reality is the world has changed. We're all living in a connected environment. There's a ton of data available. I mean, I can get shipping records of every ship entering the United States. What's the cargo? What's the source? So with the world being more open and collaborating, you would need to drive some sort of strategy with your supplier. I'm most definitely not saying go and tell your supplier everything. I would go and tell your supplier what the future looks like in terms of the volume that you're going to consume, so that the both of you can then negotiate a mutually beneficial agreement. Is it a blanket order of $1 million? Is it maybe 500,000? And how do we get that over time? So definitely do that. I also see collaboration from strategic customers. So if the customer says, Warren, I'm going to require you to deliver this at a 99% service level, well, you need that customer to tell you what the future looks like. So it goes both ways. And I really like that concept of the value chain, because it is a value chain. Everybody can win. Everybody
Right.
can, participate, and the thing can be sustainable in the future. So absolutely, it's the way of the future.
Right. Fantastic. So, so we talk about planning, forecasting, and in an ideal world, it would be easily to measure and just nice and consistent. Okay, it's easy peasy at that point. It's like the weather in San Diego. It's always 72 and sunny. But businesses are, distributors don't live in that world, and so we introduce things like seasonality, promotions. That can have a tremendous impact on your planning and forecasting. So do me a favor, let's talk about that for a little bit. How does seasonality come into play, promotions come into play, and how can you best plan for that?
So again, it starts off with a basic plan of how often does it occur? Has it occurred in the past? Will it occur in the future? I mean, there's a lot of simple things that you can get, and there's obviously a lot of websites offer some insight on it. The one that I often use is the let me just get the name of this, is the supply chain. Let me just get the name of it. Sorry. The ASCM, or the Association of Supply Chain Management, is one of the places that tell you or guide you around, how to navigate some of these things. So go out there, see what the industry does is probably the first thing. The thing that I always tell people is that we as the consumer, because me included, I love the ability to go on Amazon, click, and ding dong, it's at my door in record time. As much as I work in supply chain, and I know that I just imported product from Germany at record time, we got to understand that we as the consumer are being trained how to buy. So seasonality and promotions are going to just get more and more complicated. I don't buy certain products unless it's on sale. I wait for it to be on sale because I know there's a cycle for it to be on sale. So, the consumer's getting clever, more and more clever to, how to buy. And there's more and more competition entering the market. So there's going to be more promotional things happening, seasons within seasons. So it's definitely not going to go away. It's definitely going to get more complicated. And I think the world with digital marketing makes it so much easier to reach people in far out places and tell them about a product that you are cultivating tomorrow's season, which is not even part of any sort of standard season that anybody knows about. So long story short, seasonality is something that you need to consider. Seasons within seasons is something that you need to consider. And the consumer being more savvy as to when to buy is something that a lot of people also need to consider. There's an interesting stat in North America, Mark, that says that typically all product that gets sold on a promotion or a sale, 4% of that stuff gets returned. So you also got to deal with at least 4% of the stuff that's going to come back that you need to figure out what you do with that. Can't go to the landfill. That's not an option. You got to redistribute, send it somewhere else in the world. But you got to know that 4% typically will come back.
So return management in that situation is key, and effective and efficiently handling returns, putting it back into inventory and making it available as quickly as possible for sale again is a critical component to all of that. Knowing that that's, 4% doesn't sound like much, but when you start 4% start showing up at your back door, then yeah, it's something you have to deal with.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt
And I
about
think
it.
the other thing to add to that is that it's not just the 4% that comes back. I mean, if you take Amazon, that's a mighty business. I mean, there's billions and billions of dollars. 4%
Oh, yeah.
of, I don't know, $100 billion. It's a lot of product. But the challenge with that is that you also got holding costs on that. So typically in North America, your holding cost is between 18 to 22%. So you get the 4% back. And now there's a charge on that. So there's a monthly secure, there's a store, there's an insure. And to top it all off, the double whammy is that you got a 2% margin. So by month number 2 or month number 3, this thing is a liability, and it's going to keep costing, and it's going to keep costing, and it's going to keep costing because you're out of season now. Nobody wants to buy that product because that was last season product.
Right. No, exactly.
So Warren, on the seasonality or the promotions topic, do you find most organizations that we work with specifically, do they have their promotion strategy right, or is it kind of way off, or is it are they running promotions seasonally, I guess, or is it just, hey, we got too much inventory, let's run a promo and get it out of here?
So look, I'm going to be very careful how I answer that question because some people might be listening, going, damn that Warren guy, I thought he said I'm doing a good job. So I think typically organizations use the mechanism of promotion wrong. I don't think it's quite like you said there, Don. I often find organizations not even worried about the stock level, but rather just more about the promotion because somebody else is doing something. So I'm a big fan of a promotion being executed for the right reason. I have too much. It's coming to the end of its life, or there's an expiry date on it. I'm going to run a promotion, lower the price, increase the demand. Typical price elasticity models, but it doesn't work like that. I was in a beverage company in South Africa once, and I asked the guy, "What is your yearly promotional spend?" And he said, "Warren, it was about 700 million rand, which is probably not that much in dollars, but 700 million rand." And I said, "Okay, so how much of that works?" And the guy said, "I don't know, but I know that if I throw 700 million rand into that pot, I know that I get a certain growth." So a lot of organizations have completely, lost the plot as to why they do that, because they're driven by the market. The market kind of dictates, or let's say Coca-Cola goes and does something. Me as the sort of inferior brand would also have to do something to compete. So it is used, but for the wrong reason.
More of a reactive approach rather than a proactive approach.
100%. 100%.
Right.
And I'm not going to say it's marketing or sales. It's the things you have to do to show the end consumer that I too can participate. I too can give you a good deal.
Yeah, and I've seen that a lot when it comes to marketing. Marketing has always had this mystique to it. It's kind of half science and half art. And I've heard the same stats that it's 80-20, the 80-20 rule. I spend 100%, but only 20% really effectively does something for me. But I don't know what the 20% is. Okay, 100%. So I've got to spend the remaining 80%. And so we talk in our space with our clients about getting to ROMI. So ROMI is just return on marketing investment. And how can you sit there and calculate back to, I spent X amount of dollars, I got Y number of opportunities and Z revenue. And did it work? Did I have an effective marketing return on my marketing investment? And now I actually know a little bit better where those dollars need to go.
Great.
So, I'm not saying you're going to go from 80-20 to, 90-10, but if you can get to 70-30 and 60-40, those are big, big changes in the business. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
All right. So market conditions, let's talk about that for a little bit. We've gone through an unprecedented time here in the last 5 years as far as change in the market. And again, with the pandemic, with a global supply chain that's now available to us, with strife in certain parts of the globe, with economic impact in different areas. Recommendations for distributors on being able to best deal with that, because it's almost like we have to have a political science degree these days to be able to understand the impact on our supply chain. So let's talk about that for a second.
That's a good first step, I suppose.
Yeah,
exactly.
That and what is it? A big data science degree and
exactly.
Mathematician and all these things. So I think the quick answer is that 5 years ago, whenever that little virus blew through town, Mark, people were just kind of saying, I've got Excel. I want to do something a little bit better because I want to be home early and spend some time with my kids. That was kind of the conversation 5, maybe 8, 10 years ago.
Right.
The conversation now is I need something. I have to do it better because if I don't, I will be out of business. And that's what the little virus that blew through town did to a lot of organizations. They grew up very quickly. They were forced to find better ways at maintaining more of that, that margins and things. So thus the small organizations that I talk to now are bringing promotions up as a key thing, are bringing price elasticity and pack size optimization. Again, these were things I were talking to companies like Nestle and Gillette and, the real big companies, the real, call it the gorillas in the market. They were talking about those things. But now I'm talking to $2-3 million turnover companies that need the same sort of things because they're trying to be as reactive as those big guys in the market. So everybody grew up very quickly. The ones that are still in business know that they have to do and keep innovating to stay in business. And I think a lot of people also realize that they can create product on the fly and also be as successful as some of these big guys in the market.
Yeah, no, agreed. And what I'm seeing is, we've been talking cloud for years and years and years, and adoption of cloud was moving along at a very slow and consistent pace, very slowly and very consistently until COVID. And when COVID hit, people woke up and realized, one, the benefit of being in the cloud, because now my people aren't here. Okay. They need access to these systems remotely. And what's the best and most secure way of doing that? Cloud. To your point, these solutions are now available to $2, $3, $5 million companies that have never been available to them in the past. Why? Because the barriers to entry have been removed. And the costs can be spread out on a monthly basis or annual basis. It's not all this one big upfront investment. So we've seen a lot of change, a lot of adoption, and the ability to scale down to meet the needs of these smaller distributors that in the past, Excel was their choice. That was it. That's what they could afford. So it's interesting to see that change and, in the market. Let's talk last kind of area that I want to discuss, and then we can kind of summarize and put some final thoughts out there. But redundancy in the supply chain. Let's hit on that for a second. I think there's been some lessons learned there as well about having some redundancy. Thoughts, observations on your end?
Again, that's such a big topic. So I'll do my best to kind of give the high level stuff. So I think again, a lot of people, and I want to say this again carefully, a lot of people during COVID realized that they slowly importing bits of China one order at a time. And then when the ships get sort of, halted in the harbor, those things are not available. So I think certainly redundancy, a lot of stuff should be nearshored, a lot of stuff should be produced here. Again, that's a whole topic about cost and labor and all of those things. But certainly, chips and cars is something that I think the government have realized, hey, this is a big problem. That tiny little island off the coast of China is a very key thing for the world. So it certainly it was a big step change for what's critical should be local. What's cheap and kind of abundant should come from far away. So that's the first thing. I think the other thing also is that, people started understanding, the cost of moving things. I mean, the United States is a big place. Moving things from East Coast to West Coast, it's not just complicated, but it's expensive. So let's rather be agile to have smaller manufacturing plants that's owned by families. Let's empower them. Let's grow them. So certainly, again, 10 years ago, everybody was looking at the cheapest possible way. Now it's the most reliable way that I can reliably go and promise my customer a service level or a fill rate that makes sense. I've definitely seen a change in that. Again, it's not going as fast as we want it to go. There's still a lot of Tesla components that are not produced here because there's just not, rare earth products that are available here, but there's definitely a drive towards getting there.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. All right, so we've covered a lot of different topics, but I think we've done a good job of, again, touching on the different components of the supply, / value chain, from suppliers to distributors to end customers. Final thoughts, final advice to our viewers on things they can do, easy steps they can take to start making some progress in this area?
I think that the one that just pops to mind there, Mark, is that being a distributor, you gotta accept the fact that you are going to be the bank. You're going to be the shock absorber. You're going to be the buffer. You're going to be whatever you want to call that thing. You're going to be the ham and the sandwich, for lack of a better word. And it's all about how clever you are about being the ham and the sandwich. You know, a lot of distributors have a lot of money, so they can go and kind of make the shock absorber wide. A lot of distributors don't have that. So first of all, acknowledge that you're going to be the banker and you're going to put a lot of money in there because you're the middleman. But be clever about it. Don't think about next month. Be tactical. Think about next quarter. Think about next year. Think about the next 2 years. The data is available. There's a lot of people studying this space actively every day. Take that data, understand that data, and then go and build your business a little bit clever than what you used to do 10 years ago, 5 years ago. That would be my advice to the distributors.
Yeah, no, great thoughts. Great thoughts. So, well, gentlemen, again, we've covered a lot of different topics today. I want to thank you both for your time in discussing what I believe is an extremely important topic. Because again, in distribution, the margins are such that if you don't get some of these things right, it can be a question of whether you're in business or not. And so we need to sharpen the sword and make sure that we're always focusing and we're always improving the overall business, but specifically in this area in demand planning and forecasting. For the audience out there, if there's additional questions you have, do me a favor, reach out to me, Mark Munson at Ace Micro. Email address is mmmunson@acemicrotech.com. Happy to take any additional questions. If I don't have the answer, I will certainly get you an answer. So, Warren, Don, again, thank you for your participation. To the viewers out there, thank you for your attendance. I wish everybody a great day.